Right now, February 25, 2026, the February 2026 American winter storm is officially over. But the crisis in the United States is not, and New York and New Jersey remain at the center of the impact. At least 131 people have lost their lives across the United States, including New York and New Jersey. Nearly 100,000 customers are still without power and heat in parts of the country as a new coastal storm, Winter Storm Jana, begins to form off the Atlantic. Here is the important part. The United States is moving from one historic winter disaster straight into the next. The storm known as Winter Storm Fern began over the Pacific around February 20th, tapping moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific. When it met Arctic air diving south, it became one of North America's largest winter storms, sweeping from the central U.S. to the mid-Atlantic, including New York and New Jersey, between February 22nd and today.
What's happening? Why are we stopped? Look at the cliff!
At its peak, more than 120 million people were under some form of winter storm, ice, or extreme cold alert. Satellite images from NOAA showed a massive comma-shaped cloud shield stretching well over 1,000 miles, wrapping around a deep low-pressure center. On the ground, that structure translated into a dangerous mix of heavy snow, freezing rain, and brutal wind chills. By the time the storm finally weakened, at least 131 people had lost their lives in the United States. In some areas, the main killer was not the snow itself, but the cold that followed once the storm passed and the skies cleared. More than 1 million customers lost power at the height of the event, especially in regions where ice and wet snow brought down trees and power lines never designed for this kind of weight. Between February 23rd and today, airlines canceled over 10,000 flights nationwide, including more than 12,000 in a single day, turning airports into makeshift shelters for stranded travelers. On the coldest morning, more than half of the lower 48 states were covered in snow. All of that would already be enough to mark Fern as a historic storm. But for millions of people, the real crisis began after the radar echoes faded. When the lights stayed off, the temperature kept falling, and warnings about the next storm started to arrive. In the maps and satellite loops, Winter Storm Fern is now history. The core low-pressure center has broken apart. The big snow shield is faded. But on the ground, the last 24 hours have felt nothing like an ending for millions across North America, especially in New York and New Jersey. A deep dome of Arctic air is still locked in over the Midwest, the South, and the East, pushing temperatures far below the late February average. In some rural valleys, wind chills have sunk to levels that can freeze exposed skin in minutes. According to surface temperature analyses from NASA and NOAA, large parts of the central and eastern United States are still running far colder than normal. That cold has turned every remaining power outage into a life-threatening situation. Late on February 25th, officials estimated that tens of thousands of customers across New York and New Jersey still had no electricity or heat, particularly in rural pockets and outlying suburbs where downed power lines and heavy snow have delayed restoration efforts. For many of these residents, the blackout began days ago when Fern's extreme snow and ice caused widespread damage to local grids and distribution lines. While the radar no longer shows a giant snowstorm, the humanitarian map tells a different story. The American Red Cross reports that around 1,400 volunteers and staff are working across 13 states. On Thursday night alone, roughly 2,800 people spent the night in emergency shelters, either trying to stay warm on cots and gym floors as the temperature outside plunged. At the same time, federal and state agencies are still treating this as an active winter disaster, not a past one. The The official USA government website for the 2026 winter storm was updated again on February 25th, pointing people to warming centers, shelters, and local hotlines. It warns that communities already hit hard by Fern must now prepare for another dangerous system. A coastal storm named Winter Storm Jana could bring blizzard conditions, coastal flooding, and yet more power outages to the East Coast within hours, not weeks. Walk into one of the emergency shelters still open tonight, and the scale of this disaster feels very different from a satellite image. Gym floors are lined with cots and folded blankets. Children play quietly with donated toys while their parents huddle around extension cords trying to charge phones and check on relatives in other states. Many of these families have been here since the weekend after ice and wet snow from Fern snapped the power lines that feed their neighborhoods. They are waiting for two things that still have not fully returned: heat and certainty. Red Cross workers describe the same pattern repeating across 11 states. People arrive at the door shivering, some after spending hours in dark, unheated homes where the indoor temperature has dropped close to the freezing mark. Volunteers hand out hot drinks, simple meals, and information about where to find medical help if someone in the family depends on oxygen, dialysis, or refrigerated medicine. In rural counties, local churches and community centers have turned into unofficial warming stations, filling a gap when the formal shelter network is stretched thin. Inside hospitals, another quieter emergency is building. The same winter storm that knocked out power and shut down highways also shut down blood drives. Since February 25th, more than 500 blood donation events have been canceled nationwide. That means over 20,000 units of blood and platelets were never collected. For doctors and trauma centers and cancer wards, it is a statistic with very real faces behind it. They are being asked to prepare for more traffic accidents, more heart attacks, more cold-related emergencies. While the national blood supply has fallen by roughly 1/3 in a single month, all of this is happening while a second storm, Jana, lines up offshore, threatening to send even more people into shelters and emergency rooms that are already operating at their limit. For the communities hit by Fern, the last week has felt like living inside two different disasters at once. There is the visible damage. Snow drifts piled against houses, tree limbs scattered across streets, power crews still working 12-hour shifts to repair lines that snapped under the weight of ice. And then there is the slower, less visible damage. Lost wages, spoiled food, children out of school for days, families burning through savings just to stay in motels with heat and running water. US in the comments, how is your city coping with the aftermath of Fern? Has New York, New Jersey, or your area in North America faced blackouts, frozen streets, or emergency evacuations? Share your story and let's see how communities are helping each other survive this historic winter.